Welcome back to the road to 1975 World Championship match. In Leningrad 1973, Interzonal phase still, round 1. Now let's look at the game even Radulov-Quinteros. And here we get Sicilian defense. Knight f3, e6, the so-called French variation where we open up the bishop instantly. Make this harder to develop this way, but it has ways to get out. Maybe sometimes b6, a6, b5. Options open. Usually I end up on this diagonal. Sometimes on d7. d4 takes, so open Sicilian. And black's choice is the Khan variation. So notice that there's all the pawns are on the light squares, which means that always that the dark squares on the other hand will be much harder to control for black. Here white has options. You can play knight bishop d3 or go for c4 instantly. So Marucci bind. Here we get the knight c3 line instead. Just developing the knight. And queen c7. Looking at this knight here, covering the bishop coming from here. Not that the bishop would be that great here, since there is this kind of sturdy e6 pawn, but also it will line up with possible bishop batteries. And bishop d3 can't go here. There's the bishop e2, of course, the Scheveningen variation. Here it's the second most aggressive, or even maybe the most aggressive placement for the bishop, and it is at the moment blocked by the pawn. But you could see that someday this could be moving forward and the bishop would be opening up to h7, hopefully where the black king would be residing. Black develops and white gets castled. And now typical move in the Khan, bishop c5, putting a question for the knight. We could defend it with the bishop here, but in the game black drops back. So this achieved one of its goals. Did drive away the active knight on d4. Not that great of a square on b3. This is also a crossroads for black. Usually those are the moves. This is much more solid, keeping eye on d6 square and keeping the knight defended. Extra defender for the king. This, chosen in the game, is much more aggressive, keeping the bishop here, keeping the f-pawn pinned, so don't have to worry about the pawn storm coming yet. But the downside, of course, is that it does leave the king side and the dark squares on this side a little bit weaker. Also, in some cases, it's easier maybe to trade off from here than it would be from here. And those trades tend to make holding on to the dark squares a little harder. White goes bishop g5. Not sure that's a real threat, since white does like the bishop. But on the other hand, where would you go if you can't go f4, can't go e3. d2 looks a little tame. So kind of getting out of here, and with the idea of queen coming here and building the battery there, and maybe then coming back to harass the queen, eyeing the d6 square, for instance. But the g file opening up, giving up the bishop doesn't seem that ideal for white. So I'm not sure this is the main goal at all. Well, black plays queen e5, which might end up a little bit exposed here. Knight c6, for instance, would be the more normal continuation here. f4 is not possible because the f-pawn is still pinned. So queen is somewhat safe on e5 for now. Queen d2 defends the bishop. I mean, I guess dropping back and eyeing this route could have been another option. But this does threaten to just do it this way. Bishop f4. Notice that there's no squares for queen to back down. You would have to go here, and then you could easily see that a bishop ending up in a d6 could make it really hard for black to live, even with the e5 to follow, but might be just stay there without that too. Like quite a nasty bishop to live with. So black stops that. Knight h5 takes away this square. And white moves the king away, now freeing the f-pawn. And black attacks the bishop. So sadly we can come here, and maybe if we go here there might have been some g5 to follow and knight takes the bishop. So we drop here. Least of the, like at least if we lose the bishop, we want to get the knight, the black's counterpart with that, and still they would have some problems with the dark squares. g5, no trades, but again getting a real bind on the against f4. And white starts to eye the squares around here. Maybe takes and put the knight here. So black decides that the queen has done its job here. He comes there to cover b6. And well, this was not the threat since the bishop did cover that one. So there was no funny business on that one though. Mainly maybe to cover this square. And well, maybe someday f4 could have been coming. Well, white goes to the Marxi bind. Of course, leaving this bishop as a kind of huge pawn at the moment, but since white hasn't played f3 yet, it could be coming here, harassing the knight here. But yeah, making d5 impossible, and black plays b6. This is of course a little weird. You could think that maybe you're supposed to take first and then play b6, but you can't. And the knight would be coming here. Have a very hard time. Maybe even the pawn would be coming here and really taking a real bind on those dark squares. And if you count those, then getting this out would be really hard. Well, the knight can come out, but the others might struggle a little bit. Still, it looks a little like black's plans have gone a little wrong with the bishop behind the pawn there. I mean, maybe you could someday see it getting to a new diagonal and there and put pressure on h2, but seems a little far-fetched. Bishop d4, hitting the rook. Also taking some squares away from the knight, so at some point this could get a little bit unpleasant. Does have a square here still. Well, black says nah. And now you can quickly see that this turns from the, or black had quite a lot of trouble on the dark squares for a while. And this turns into a putting some pawns to controlling, well, 3 pawns on the dark squares. So your dark squares are pretty well handled now. Of course, you made a backwards pawn on d6, but what these moves do is that they weaken the light squares a lot. Well, maybe this is not weak yet, but turn around. White instantly puts the rook here, eyeing on the backwards d6. And black returns with the knight. Here, maybe the alternative could have been the knight f4 instead. Looking at this, but I don't know. Probably white would not really worry about the bishop being there taken. Just get rid of the troublesome bishop that's being blocked by our pawns. Not that black would probably take anyways, but just to demonstrate. Maybe we'll kick your knight away. It seems like a decent square for the knight here. On f6, it does of course control the d5, where people might be wanting to go. f3 overprotects this first. Maybe it was targetable at some point. Black develops, knight could come here. Seems like a nice place for it. And white just drops the bishop back away. Maybe it's going to get to this diagonal or even here. But mainly we get out of the d-file. And since black's definitely not castling kingside, that looks kind of shaky castles, for instance. Could almost instantly go and sack something there. The king is more likely to stay in the center, so might as well be useful. King e7, at least defends the d6. White keeps on bringing the rooks into the play, lining up with the queen. Now you could see that the knight d5s could instantly be the c takes hitting the queen, getting a tempo that way. Well, black really lines up on the d5 square. And this did its job. That was well guarded, so no point keeping a pressure on there. We're eyeing this square. And black jumps to c5. But this is not a permanent residence for the knight though. It's not an pure outpost since it can be kicked out by b4. And white says, no trades, thank you. Your black's a little more cramped than white is. So, idea is to push b4, kick this guy back, and enjoy our little space advantage. Also, the knight is not coming back here. It's thinking that it's even though it's at the moment in the corner, but it's eyeing another way into more useful squares. Alright, black overprotects d6. White kicks the knight away, and then he plays bishop f2, opening this square up for the knight. Not sure we could come from this side. This could get a little dangerous for white, trying to open this side up since there is a rook bearing down on our king. Alright, knight f8. Black has also some ideas. Putting the knight to use. Anyways, this is going there. Black brings to this side. And the knight does keep coming towards the sweet spot here. And black gets away from instantly from the checks. And white just goes there. And black says, okay, you wasted a lot of time. How about I'll just trade you away? And white says, might as well. Of course, that helped black a little bit. Got rid of the pretty nasty looking knight. Some trades. But his weaknesses still exist. There's the weak d6. White has some options. There is the knight. The bishop is completely blocked in. The rook's lined up here. Some moment the knight is jumping to d5. Even though we did ease up the cramped position of black a little bit. Alright, bishop e3. Now it's freed the square. Now it comes back here. Not sure the idea is to ever sack there, but it does. This Maroczy structure with the a6, b6. This kind of a pressure on b6 is often seen. Could see the knight coming back there to put more pressure there. Alright, this bishop goes here. Maybe he wants to go here, overprotect this side or that side. Put some pressure on c4. And queen f2 lines up here. Also it's a pin, so there is the white has the long-term plan of a4, a5 and taking advantage of the pinned pawn. Bishop e6. And white does go with that plan. And here, sneaking off the pawn, we'll just take, and bang. Check to your face. No good. Pawn is taboo. Also, it would look so quite dodgy to begin with. Black instead defends the bishop. But of course, the rook going backwards there is not a move you make very easily. But it does take care of a5 plan. Protecting the bishop. And now this is the moment white choose to jump into d5. Bishop takes, has to take with something. And pawn takes. We'll get the nice c6 square to infiltrate the c-file. Plan is to double up. And also puts more pressure on the b6 instantly. So black defends the b6 and white just doubles up. And black plays b5. Here something like rook 8 c8 to try to challenge the rooks. White could just add a pressure there. Not that it was really a threat, since that would have been a nasty fork. But yeah, forcing black to do something. For instance, king defending the rook. We could play b5. Drops that, or let's say... The problem here is that nothing almost moves anymore. Let's say just move here. The rook is pinned to a queen, so it's not hanging yet. But then we can always keep on adding pressure here, and it's just going to collapse. Like, try to ease this up, get rid of this bishop here, plays b5. And black white goes to rook c7, kind of forcing takes. And after queen b8, we play a5, really keeping full control of the board. No rooks here, no rooks here. Knight has no squares around here. Also, it's pinned. So king is kind of stuck guarding that one. Well, rook comes to defend the knight, and white includes the last piece into the play. Bishop on f1. Also, there is some f4 ideas just to crash completely on the other side too. Bishop comes to h3. And black plays the knight f6. But the bishop is nicely lined up here. f4 would win also. Like, it's going to just completely collapse instantly. You have a rook coming here. You have the rook coming here. Queen coming here. Almost no defenders. And sack the e4 and just crash through the way you want. Like, it's also collapsing. Here, instead of that, white chose another way. Bishop c8. Threatening to trap the queen. And that would be possible here. But he doesn't go for it. I mean, this is completely winning too. But maybe he thinks that there's some chances here. I doubt it, but some kind of a quick double up. But f4 is still really strong. h4 is really strong. But instead he just goes for the pawn instead. Black defends the pawn. And white trades the queens off and just picks up the pawn. No play at all. Everything this. Black defends that. Bishop goes back. King e7. And then we play rook b6. And black plays rook a8. And white blocks the b file, threatens to steal another pawn. Black attacks the bishop. So bishop drops back here. Idea that if you take here, you have a really hard time trying to stop this. You can still do it this way, but get behind the pawn, but the rook's coming here and winning easily anyways. So I think around this part, black just resigned. Yeah, there was quite a nice game. A lot of square complex weaknesses. First the dark squares, then the light squares. And a nice exploitation of the c file. Alright, until next time. Bye bye.